Karine Jean-Pierre, Biden's former White House press secretary, is getting absolutely demolished by her former colleagues in the press today. Why? Well, Karine Jean-Pierre is out with a new book called Independent, a look inside a broken White House outside the party lines. Now, the book doesn't drop until September, but Karine Jean-Pierre dropped an announcement about both the book and her decision to leave the Democratic Party at the same time, surely sending pre-sales through the roof, would be my guess. Take a look at this announcement video.
Hi, I'm Karine Jean-Pierre, and I am the author of a new book that's coming out this fall called Independent. It's coming out on October 21st, so please do grab it. And the reason I wrote this book, coming out of the White House, serving as White House press secretary was an honor and a privilege. But since I have left, the people that come up to me, strangers that come up to me just across the country as I'm traveling, and sometimes right in my neighborhood, at a grocery store, supermarket, airport, my daughter's school, the number one question they ask me is, Karine, how do we get out of this? How do we protect our democracy? How do we protect vulnerable communities among us? What do we do next? Because we don't have answers here. That's what they ask me. And this is my answer. And what I mean by that is, in an era of misinformation, disinformation, the regressiveness of social policy, what we're seeing currently right now, what I have decided to do, and I really have thought long and hard about this, is to follow my own compass. And that's what I've done. And that's what this book does. And here's the truth. And here's how I will lay it out to you. I think we need to stop thinking in boxes and think outside of our boxes and not be so partisan. And the way that I see moving forward in this space that we're in right now is, if you are willing to stand side by side with me, regardless of your how you identify politically, and as long as you respect the community that I belong to and vulnerable communities that I respect, I will be there with you. I will move forward with you. And that is, I think, so important. So this book, Independent, it's about looking outside of boxes, not just always being in a partisan stance. And how do we move forward together in a compassionate way, in a way that really, truly cares about people? October 21st.
Okay, so a couple of things there. What you heard from her is she thinks people need to stop thinking in boxes and not be so partisan. That's part of what she mentioned in that long video clip where she announces the book, and mentions or describes the White House in the subheading of the book. And I think this is extraordinary as, quote, broken. We are not even 6 months beyond the Biden White House. And Karine Jean-Pierre already has this book cover and a publication date for something calling it, quote unquote, broken, when she was the face of that White House, standing up there every single day and pushing the Biden White House as something that was competent and the opposite of broken, really, again, every single day. Let's take a look. Let's reflect on the way Karine Jean-Pierre handled tough questions about whether or not the Biden White House was a broken one just a few months back.
Order. The possible next speaker says that he wants him to go with him, so is he going to?
So look, he's been there. He's been to the border, and since he took office.
When did he go to the border?
But that's not how it works. Like, we actually no.
I know that that's not what you guys want to happen, but that is what has happened.
But that's not. It's not like somebody walks over and that's not how.
Exactly what's happening.
Well,
Thousands of people are walking in a day. Some of them turn themselves over. Some of them are caught. Tens of thousands a week are not. That is what is happening.
it is not that simple. It's not just that people are walking across the border.
Man, those videos are wild. And it feels like almost a satirical, it almost feels like a cartoonish version of Washington, D.C., that you would have the woman who was literally the face of the Biden White House within 6 months saying, yeah, the whole thing was broken. I can't even be a Democrat anymore, promising this bill and trying to take money off of it or trying to make money off of it. It feels cartoonish. It feels like it should be satire. But For Karine Jean-Pierre, apparently her former colleagues aren't particularly surprised. Alex Thompson, who co-wrote the original Sin book with Jake Tapper, obviously has sources who were inside the Biden White House. One of them told Axios in this Thompson report that Jean-Pierre was, quote, one of the most ineffectual and unprepared people I've ever worked with. She had meltdowns after any interview that asked about a topic not sent over by producers. She didn't know how to manage a team, didn't know how to shape or deliver a message, and often created more problems than she solved. Now, this is another person who worked on the communications team for the Biden White House who told Thompson, quote, the hubris of thinking you can position yourself as an outsider when you have not only enjoyed the perks of extreme proximity to power, which bestows the name recognition needed to sell books off your name, but have actively wielded it from the biggest pulpit there is as breathtaking as it is desperate. It's difficult to see how this is anything but a bizarre cash grab. Now, Thompson has another quote here where someone says the amount of time that was spent coddling Karine Jean-Pierre and appeasing her was astronomical compared to our attention on actual matters of substance. Thompson also writes that Jean-Pierre, from his perspective, was, quote, a key part of the effort to conceal Biden's decline, vouching for his fitness and insisting the president, then 81, was as sharp as ever, even after last June's disastrous debate against Donald Trump. So there are a lot of different quotes there, obviously, from people who were inside the White House at the time. Politico also had a very buzzy report from people, quoting people who worked with Jean-Pierre, who were expressing similar sentiments from the one that you saw in the Thompson report, but I still think it's worth reading these to, I think, fully appreciate how difficult the mending process for the Democratic Party is going to be. A former official told Politico, quote, everyone thinks this is a grift. Everyone thinks this is a grift. Again, that's an anonymous quote to Politico. Another person said she made a joke about being an independent last year, and now it's a book. All ideas are monetary, even the dumb ones. Politico is also reporting that, this won't surprise you either, Karine Jean-Pierre, reportedly, wanted a slot on The View or a show on MSNBC like Jen Psaki, who was her predecessor in the press secretary role, ended up getting. Actually, that deal appears to have been struck while she was still press secretary. People will remember that controversy from the time that she was actively negotiating with one of the news networks that she was supposed to be in an adversarial relationship with while she was press secretary. But apparently, this is according to one former official and another former official to Politico, that Jean-Pierre, quote, had been hoping for a post-White House job as a co-host on The View, and then it says, quote, following the template of her predecessor, Jen Psaki, who departed the job after just more than a year for an anchor job at MSNBC, but no such opportunity materialized for Jean-Pierre, a factor three of her former colleagues surmised that likely led to the book. And I want to say that part in particular is important because the way Karine Jean-Pierre is selling herself is not to the left of Joe Biden. She's not selling herself as somebody who was frustrated with the centrism of the Biden administration. She seems to be selling herself as somebody who's just frustrated with the Democrats, period, who is thinking that even the Democrats are too partisan. And that is a message. I don't want to say that it's clever because it's obvious, but that is a message that will resonate, or that does resonate with Americans. It's not going to resonate coming from Karine Jean-Pierre. That's the problem. She knows, she's at least clever enough to know that that's where the mood of the American people is. The brand of the Democratic Party, you can look across research on this, is disastrous. Democrats have lost the trust, faith, goodwill of the American people. So the smart business move, obviously, if you're a calculating person sitting around a table, how do I sell books? Trash Democrats! Like, that'll be a great way to do it. But the problem for Karine Jean-Pierre is that she has zero credibility on this. One of the reasons people distrust Democrats is because of Karine Jean-Pierre standing up at the podium for 2.5 years. She was not an Anthony Scaramucci figure who was in and out of the Trump administration. She was there for 2.5 years, 2.5 tumultuous years, aggressively defending the president every single day. So to some extent, the only place she can go is to say, I was forced, it was all a lie, I was under enormous pressures, blah, blah, blah. Because otherwise she has to maintain the lie that Biden was fine, which is basically impossible to do. We've seen a couple Democrats try to do it, but there's also no market for that. And that's why I think this last part is really important. The Politico report that she wanted to follow in Psaki's footsteps and maybe end up as a co-host on The View, but couldn't. And no such, what did they say? No such opportunities materialized. No such opportunity materialized. Why is that? There is no market for somebody who is going to defend Joe Biden and the conduct of the Democratic Party establishment that defended Joe Biden, unless they can come out and dish on how they were under pressure to lie, and they can put the blame on other people who forced them to lie, and they just wanted to help the American people. And they thought that Joe Biden was the vehicle to do that, but they were so concerned and they couldn't get anybody to take their concerns seriously. That's what I expect this book to say. I don't expect this book to have an ounce of real humility in it, because that would be, I mean, that would require being sort of devastatingly self-aware. And it's not something that I've seen from Karine Jean-Pierre, judging by the reaction of her former colleagues. It's not something that they felt was there. Obviously, they have reason to be upset with her right now. But actually, if you flash back just a couple of years, people might remember that John Kirby was often at those White House briefings, doing a lot, actually, of the briefing itself. And reports at the time suggested that maybe Kirby was going to replace Jean-Pierre, or that she should replace Jean-Pierre. So there were leaks at the time suggesting that people were really unhappy. Karine Jean-Pierre's own colleagues in the White House were really unhappy with her, did not like her. And it looks like that's basically boiling over now that she's like, screw it, I'm not a Democrat anymore. But I think that says something very powerful about what her motivations are, that she maybe wanted to get a splashy job, and now instead she's writing a tell-all book and leaving the Democratic Party. Super, super interesting. Another point that I want to make here is one from Dave Weigel. Obviously, remember, he's been on our show, who made just this really, I think, sad observation. Dave says, a very odd part of the Biden legacy, elevating Black women as the first to be VP and White House press secretary, then making it known to everybody that they were disasters. And that does just make me really sad. Because it's true with Kamala Harris, and it's true with Karine Jean-Pierre, that they are not the most competent people for those positions. They were not selected on their merits alone. If Kamala Harris were a one-of-the-mill white senator, would she have been vice president? Likely not. She didn't make it to the Iowa caucuses. Would Karine Jean-Pierre have been White House press secretary if the White House couldn't exploit her race, sex, and sexual orientation? I really doubt it, especially because so many of her colleagues seem to have disliked her bitterly. Karine Jean-Pierre's career has taken her from Obama world, from 2008, 2012. Actually, from Obama world, she was in Martin O'Malley world. You may remember Martin O'Malley, who ran for president against Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders in 2016. She was at Move On, sort of leftist organization, generally more associated with the left than the center of the Democratic Party. But she was also she was also at NBC, MSNBC as an analyst. I think that was in 2019, so shortly before the Biden presidency. What we don't know yet is what kind of ideological turn this is going to be. We don't know if Karine Jean-Pierre is going to say that her beliefs changed, that her ideology shifted, or that, the typical cliche, like she left the Democratic Party or the Democratic Party left her. Like, we don't know which one she's going to say is the case. Presumably whatever can sell more books. But this is, I assume she's going to make a really serious effort to be seen as utterly sincere in this. And listen, if you worked in the Biden White House, that is a really easy thing to go out on TV and say, whether or not it's true, to go out there and say it, because every single person had doubts about the president's mental fitness. There's just no question about it. Every single person had a doubt, logically, we know this, at some point during the Biden presidency, people working in the White House, every one of them was thinking to themselves, wow. And every single American right now is upset with the political system. So it's not going to be hard for Karine Jean-Pierre to project some sense of authenticity in making this case, because basically all Americans share these sentiments. Biden was unwell. There are definitely true stories she's going to be able to tell and all of that. But the character that is demonstrated, the lack of character that is demonstrated, or the type of character that is demonstrated when you um, flip on your former colleagues brutally within a series just of months, and go from the smiling face of the Biden presidency to somebody who's saying that presidency was utterly broken. Presumably, you're going to throw your colleagues under the bus in a book about the broken White House, the man who hired you and entrusted you with the communications duties of the White House. Presumably, she's going to throw Biden under the bus too. To do that, to throw the party under the bus, and to act like you had no responsibility in it. Based on the video she posted, there was no responsibility demonstrated. So if that's truly what happens, then Karine Jean-Pierre, and it's likely to be what happens, by the way, unless Karine Jean-Pierre goes full like podcaster and really dishes about everything and admits that she was wrong and she was acting as a bad person, doesn't seem to be what's about to happen. We've seen, I think, people try to do that from politics here and there a few times. Like Chris Murphy, I feel like, tries to do that. Just be like, I'm leveling with you here on TikTok. Here's my beer. I'm a real human being. But it's really, if you still have future political ambitions, a very, very difficult thing to do. So Karine Jean-Pierre, listen, maybe she will come out and be honest and say she was genuinely mistaken and has learned from the past in a very sincere and authentic way, is very honest about how bad it was for her to contribute to this cover up, and then how bad it was for her to throw her colleagues under the bus. To throw her former boss under the bus. There's obviously a way to do it that's not so nakedly transactional and shameless. She's not heading down that path. So it's unlikely, again, that she's able to do that. But the public, more broadly, while they may be very interested in the stories that Karine Jean-Pierre is going to share in this book, is definitely not going to be giving her the benefit of the doubt as some brave truth teller, even if the public agrees totally with her diagnosis of the box system, thinking inside one box or the other, being broken, with the Biden White House being broken. She definitely is clever enough to know that those are popular positions, but is she clever enough to pull them off with any semblance of credibility? I highly doubt it. So thank you for tuning in. As a reminder, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and for the full experience of the show over at undercurrents.tv.